All right. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited about the panel that we have today to talk through social justice and storytelling. And today, I'm going to hand it over for everyone to do a quick introduction of themselves. But we've got an incredible panel from Kansas, Marquette, Duke, and Georgetown to talk through the moment that we're all experiencing on social and how they navigated it at their respective universities. And so I'm going to unshare my media. And Dave, you want to start us off with a quick introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Nita, for having all of us on here today. So, name's Dave Bradley, Duke basketball creative director. Been at Duke since 2000 as a student. Started here with the Duke basketball program in 2005. So, I've worn a number of different hats for the program here, but focus right now: social media, branding, student athlete branding, and overall marketing of the program. So, again, happy to be with everybody today.
Thanks, Dave. Scott.
Nita, appreciate it, and everybody at INFLCR for the opportunity. Scott Kuykendall, I'm at Marquette. This is my 14th season. Oversee our communications department, work with men's basketball specifically, along with my staff and all of our other sports as well. And remember a time when doing this job did not involve social media, which was great for a number of reasons, but also happy to be here and talking to everybody about what we're doing at our own schools and learning from each other.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. And next, Kiaira.
Yeah, thanks for having me, as well as the other panel. My name is Kiaira Cooper. It's my second year at University of Kansas. I work with women's basketball, rowing, and tennis, and I am the assistant communications director. So I handle all the outward-facing stuff with media, as well as social media for those sports. So, thanks.
Thanks. Last but not least, Vaughan.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, INFLCR, for having us. Vaughan Moss, assistant AD for marketing at Georgetown. This is the start of my third season at Georgetown, but I previously was a grad intern back in 2010, so happy to be back. Overall, I see marketing and branding initiatives work well with our communication staff to handle social media for all 29 of our sports. But obviously, we have a focus on our men's basketball, women's basketball, and some other programs that have more of a presence. But have my hands in a lot of stuff from an external standpoint. But looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. And again, thank you for the time as we get started with this important conversation. The first discussion that I want to get started off with, and Kiaira, I'm going to put you on the spot to start. What were some of the discussion points at your school as you started to embrace this moment, and how did you choose to do it? And how did you gain trust from some of the athletes? Just give us a little bit of perspective, starting with you, Kiaira, on the deliberations that happened at Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, it started out mostly this summer with all the things that happened in our social climate in the world, in our country. And some of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we did well was to be proactive rather than reactive, and making sure that we're giving our student athletes the space to express themselves and be who they are, and also show them that we stand with them too, no matter how they identify or anything like that. And that was mainly the talking points, and then just trying to figure out how we can do that to the best of our abilities. How can we utilize our platform to elevate them and their voices? And I think it started off with the idea of just voting and making sure all our student athletes are prepared for that, and they know the process for that. They understand the processes that go through that, and making sure that we give them the space to express themselves that way. And then with getting student athletes to trust me, I'm actually still in that process since I'm starting my second year at Kansas. But I think it's a little bit easier for me just because, especially with the women's basketball teams, because I look like them. And it kind of opens the door for them to feel a little bit more comfortable with me being a woman and also being a person of color as well, and just understanding the demographics of our basketball team, as well as some of the other sports that I work with as well. That kind of opens the door for me to be able to talk candidly with them, and hopefully talk candidly with me as well. And just understanding that their walk of life a little bit. And I think that helped me out a little bit.
Interesting. Scott.
Yeah, I think this was unique for so many reasons. And for me personally at Marquette, I think it's the first time that it was driven by our student athletes as far as our social media efforts through our team accounts and university. I mean, obviously you'd hear from them if they didn't like a picture you used of them, or, a graphic or something like that. But I was at home. Obviously we were not on campus at all at that point. And one of our seniors, Kobe McEwen, plays on our basketball team, reached out to me. And it was the day of the murder of George Floyd, and everything kind of started through feeds. And, to be honest, I saw it and just scrolled through it and just thought it was just another story. And but as we know, it was so much more than that. And that's not to say we wouldn't have gotten there at some point, but that Kobe and a couple of the other players really facilitated and started that conversation, and have continued that conversation as well. As far as building the trust, I think that was done before, having those relationships with your student athletes from the time they arrive on campus, whether they be a freshman to, all the way to senior. That helps as well as you kind of go into these uncharted areas that nobody's had experience with. So that's how we kind of got started.
Vaughan.
So I think for us, it starts with when everything happened this summer, the messaging from our AD down is, we all have to do better. We can all do more. We have to lean into this moment and really accept our roles and do the necessary steps that's going to take for us to move forward as a department. Coaches had their team meetings, and our athletic director, Lee Reed, joined some of those meetings to hear how those student athletes were feeling, to figure out, what it's going to take for us to be able to move forward, have those tough conversations. And couple of big takeaways from those conversations. We had our Black Student Athlete Coalition was born this summer. And that group has been very vocal and been very adamant about holding us accountable, and, came up with a list of demands of things that they'd like to see change in the athletic department to show more representation and so they can feel more supported. And they created an I Can't Breathe video, which basically talked about some very specific negative experiences that they've had as being a Black student athlete at Georgetown. And, we had a diversity, equity, inclusion working group that already existed, that started back in December 2019, that allowed us to have a foundation, but still was so much more work to be done. And so we have a new director of diversity, equity, inclusion position that's going to start this year. But overall, the key has just been increased communication and collaboration. Our coaches, the communication staff, and, our leadership of our student development program, who oversees SAC, have just been great of listening to students and hearing what's going on with them, listened to their ideas that they have and figuring out a way to bring us all together to have those ideas come to life and package them in a way that tells their story on social media. Typically my position hasn't been super connected with student athletes on a one-on-one basis because the marketing department is so focused on a lot of game day attendance and revenue generation goals. But I've been really intentional about changing that over the past year, because I want to make sure that student athletes know that I'm here to help them with the social media and marketing ideas, but also, specifically for our Black student athletes, they know that they can come talk to me if they just want to have a conversation with an administrator that looks like them.
Interesting. So far, I have not heard any potential internal hiccups. I think everyone at thus far has been able to embrace the moment, and it was almost as if you knew that the time changed internally, that it was time to embrace the athletes being able to speak up and have their own voice. Am I wrong in any school thus far? Which tees me up for Dave.
Thanks, Nita. Yeah, and obviously, for me, it's been a time to listen, and it's been a time to have empathy. Most of the time, content it comes pretty easy. Been here a while, it's easy to come up with sick videos for uni reveals and all that. And this has been so very different. So, I look for leadership from coach really first and foremost. I think one of the advantages in my position, one of the things I've liked best about it, I've been embedded really directly with the program. I have relationships, not just with Coach K, but all of our former players, and strong relationships. I've learned so much, and I've grown so much from them personally, well before, this summer or whatever. So as a program, I think overall, and as a social media group, we were somewhat, no one was necessarily well positioned. It's been a really tough time, but we all recognized it's been such a time to come together as a program. So Coach K queued up some Zoom calls. Everyone in the program that's ever worn the uniform was invited, and people could just talk. I mean, it wasn't just the top guys and national players of the year. It could be walk-ons, and there's a few former student managers on there. So just to hear some of the things that were said in those, it was really powerful. It was eye-opening for me. And then from that group sort of decided a couple, broad concepts that we really wanted to hit on, and including using our social account to kind of broadcast. And one was voting, and one was just kind of social justice, and particularly in our community here at Duke and in Durham. So, those committees formed. They had some separate meetings, small group meetings. I was able to listen in on some of those, and and through all that, through not kind of rushing to put something out, I think we're able to have a message that, and continue to have a message that really reflects, how the program feels. Of course, not how I feel or not how anyone player feels. This is what our program, this is what the brotherhood really feels, and that's I think how we've always wanted our account to be. But in this time more than ever, I think it absolutely had to be that, and we'll have to continue to have these conversations and make sure that that's what we're doing. We're all communicating. We're all together.
Got it. And so while, to segue into our next point of discussion, there's definitely that internal unity that has occurred, and athletes are embracing the more than an athlete mentality. But at the same time, there is a larger part of the population, or a large part of the population, I won't say larger, but that does believe that the intersection of sports and politics and sports and activism, it doesn't necessarily need to be there. So, I'm curious, as we move on to the second part of the discussion, is like, what kind of responses did you get from your community and your fans, and what did you learn from it? And I'm gonna start with you, Scott.
Yeah, that's a great question. We didn't get feedback specifically on anything that our guys might have shared personally from their accounts that I'm aware of that would have come through. Obviously, I don't see everything. The biggest thing that's been an issue and is an issue, it appears, with our fans is the Black Lives Matter patches on the uniforms, and that this has been from the time it was announced and continues to be the issue or the initiative that gets the most feedback consistently from us. So there was the Coaches for Action, that was Big East assistant coaches, and then the Big East adopted this, and men's basketball, at least, and maybe women's basketball, are going to wear these patches that are still being designed. So that's been probably, like I said, that is the biggest issue that we had the most feedback on, and both sides. People think we should do it. A lot of people think we shouldn't. Where, again, to Nita's point, where does sports and everything else cross? How much should that be visible and a reminder? Mm-hmm. So that's probably the biggest one, and will be as we continue to move forward.
Got it. We'll kick it back to Vaughan. Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say publicly the response has seemed to be pretty overall positive, except for a troll or a bot account here and there. I mean, the biggest takeaway from me through all this and the stuff that we put out and our response to what's happening is the imprint that big coach John Thompson has had on this world is a huge reason why people are fans of Georgetown and why people support Georgetown. And so, I mean, we could do a whole panel on Coach Thompson's impact. So, you know, if you're not familiar, please go do your Googles. But the work that Coach Thompson did was a focal point of a Black Lives Matter video we did this summer. It was important to make sure that people remember that we've always been in this conversation and talk about, you know, how he was so much more than a basketball coach, and he was a teacher and a leader, but most importantly, you know, he used his voice to be an advocate for Black people in America. And so, you know, it's also important to note that, you know, our team in 2015 wore "I Can't Breathe" t-shirts. So, you know, for me, that's the response that I've seen. It's important for us to make sure that we continue to honor his legacy in that space as we continue to really address all the issues as much as we can, you know, in the social climate that we're dealing with right now.
Kiaira.
Yeah, outward facing, I think we've had, by and large, like a good reaction to what the stuff that we've put out socially from the women's basketball side. I think everyone has those trolls that come out of the woodworks to say things, but for the most part, it's been a really good feedback from our outside community as well as fans. And I think what's really cool is that how the community outside of athletics has also been very just supportive, especially like on campus and things like that. I know for women's basketball, the biggest thing that we did that I thought was really cool is the women's basketball team did a march on campus from Allen Fieldhouse to our football field, and it started off with them just saying, we're going to do it. It's going to be our team. We're going to march. They didn't think that anyone was going to join them. And then it kind of, with the help of our student development department and being able to use social media to kind of spread the word that they're doing this, it spread like wildfire. And then to see the support from the community, people that live in Lawrence, people that live in Kansas City, people that were on campus at the time, I thought was really great to see that how much they supported what the women's basketball team was trying to do and what they were trying to say. And I think that the team really was shocked to see how much support they had from that standpoint. Because they, like I said, they were expecting it just them marching, and they were ready to do it and ready to do it by themselves. And then to see the support from the other teams, from the administration, from their coaches, from the community, from some of these people just joining in on the march, mid-March. Like, you just see a group of people marching. They said, oh, what's going on? And then they said, I support that cause. Let me do it as well. And these are students that probably didn't know anything about the women's basketball team or anything like that.
Kiaira, I think we actually have a copy of this video too, don't we?
Yes, we do. And I wanted to show that as well.
We had a conversation in the locker room on Thursday before practice, and we were talking about the social injustices that have been happening lately with Jacob Blake, and we felt like we were the team that could take a stand and lead this movement. And once we started talking about taking action, then we figured we could go on a march. We all made the executive decision together that we need to go and we need to be the ones to start the change. And then just look at how many people are here today. We want to unify the people with a voice in Lawrence and let everyone know that their voice will be heard today.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
Our young women deserve all the credit. You know, this was their idea, and I just couldn't be more proud of their voice and their ability to put together such a successful, peaceful march.
We all have the same mindset. We all support each other. We all love each other, and it's just amazing to be in a program that cares so much about you as a person, your skin color, everything.
But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, and it didn't show the whole scope of it, but it was cool to see how how many people from the community kind of showed up for them and showed up for the cause, and how the women's team was able to just speak up and use their voice. And I think they really appreciated all the support they got from not only the athletic department, but the community as a whole.
Is there anything you learned from that?
I learned to just, these student athletes, they have a voice, like, and they have something to say, and it's important that we listen to what they have to say. And we have a platform to amplify their voices. And I learned that people want to hear from them. You know, they don't want to just see yeah, they want to see the cool graphics, they want to see the cool videos, but they also want to see those organic, authentic, firsthand accounts of like what these athletes and who these athletes are and them as a person. And I learned that the community and people that watch these student athletes day in and day out, and they watch their athletic career, they also want to know just who they are. And I think that us utilizing our platforms to amplify their voices and let them express who they are, that helps them in the long run. And that helps them also just grow in how they want to express themselves, how they want to live as a full person. Like everyone says, they're more than just athletes.
And you're pretty much speaking into what our company Influencers mission is. And I'm even wearing the shirt. We serve storytellers. And ultimately, this is a story that athletes need to have embraced and have started to tell. And you're kicking over to you, Dave, on this front. I've seen a lot of powerful content from Duke, where between you all and even Marquette, Scott, that you've just been really paving the way and pretty much building an umbrella for everyone to follow your lead in. Talk to me a little bit about how it shaped your perspective with the community and the fans and what you've learned from it.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to lean into, you know, where our players were feeling, you know, as we had all these conversations. And I would echo what Vaughan said, right? Like, the values of our program, like, it's not anything new. Certainly we're putting more out maybe, but it's not new. Like, this is who we're about. You know, Coach K had probably our, you know, the biggest splash we made. Coach, I mean, it was a really simple video. It was all Coach. He carried about a couple-minute video. Our most viewed ever on Twitter, 3.5 million views. I'm sure most people have seen it. That went viral. That was really well received. We picked a bunch of followers on Twitter, where, you know, lately we haven't been growing on Twitter as much. You know, we did a voting video where, again, we had that brotherhood voting committee. We kind of worked together on that. We've been trying to encourage our players to use their voices, and we've always done that. And then
back to that video, though, was that a one-take video?
It was a one-take video. One-take video for Coach. Yeah, he crushed it. You know, I think that was a good example. Coach spent a lot of time thinking about that. He listened. He had empathy for his former players. I think he learned some things. Even a guy like that, you know, he's older, he's experienced, but he's always listening. It was a great example for all of us. And when he was ready to do the video, he called us in and we shot the video. It wasn't any notes. He actually, the day before, he kind of did the whole video to me over the phone, and it was like exactly what he did on film. So I think you could feel, you know, that it was real. It wasn't scripted. And that's sort of kind of the vibe that we will want to have going forward. No question, you know, there's been a great reception, and then especially on Facebook, like, there's been some kind of ugly comments and all that, and people that say shut up and dribble. And, like, those people's days are over. Like, if that's what you want to say, you don't have to be a Duke fan, right? Like, this is our program. This is how our players feel. We're pretty united in this message that we're putting out. It's not these spur of the moment tweets that just the social media guy feels like. This is our program. These are our values, right? Coach K has a community center in Durham that's as good of an example as there's nationally for serving the community, helping underprivileged kids. So we've been here, we've done this, Coach has done it, and we want to continue to make sure the voice and the feelings of our players, the folks that have worn the uniform, are represented. This is important to them. It's important to Coach. It's going to be important to the social media team. We're going to put it out there. People don't like it. They don't have to like it, right? I mean, we're not going to change for some of these old folks on Facebook that throw, I don't want to get too deep into that, but we're going to do what we're going to do.
Dave, you were hinting at Coach K was listening. Exactly what was he doing to listen?
Yeah, so we had three Zooms where literally, like I said, every former player was invited, and Coach would sort of lead the discussion, but we also had Nolan Smith, our director of ops, on there. And Nolan's another example. He has been extremely active in our community here in Durham for years, has been this summer more than ever. Nolan's leading it, but you have all these former players coming on, and they're just open. Like, how do you feel? And Coach wouldn't say much. He was just listening, and he would weigh in here and there. And Coach is a guy, usually he does all the talking and should, right? He's our leader. He's directing the whole program. And here he was for hours at a time, simply listening and having these conversations. Then we broke off in these little subcommittees, like I said, for voting and Duke Durham, and kind of brought more thoughts back to Coach. Hey, here's what we're thinking. We talked to more former players. So, we've been pretty organized, I think, internally to make sure the message was on brand and aligned with how everyone feels.
And I think each of you have alluded to this, but how were all of you able to get context from the athletes on how official social channels can really be a part of the conversation? Because it's one thing for you to support the individuals, support the ethos of the coaching staff, but from a brand, from a team perspective, how did you weave in that voice into the narrative that you were trying to push out to help support the team? And just gonna throw it out to whoever wants to bite first. No one?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, I think for me that goes back to, it's challenging, right? Because it starts, I think, recognizing my position in the program. I haven't worn the uniform. I'm a white male. I'm privileged in a few different ways. But I've been fortunate to be embedded in the program, like I said. So I have these relationships. So I'm reaching out to guys who've worn the uniform that I'm especially close with, and just calling them, talking to Nolan Smith, talking to our staff. And again, it's listening, having empathy. And the more I did that and have always tried to do that, I think it makes it a lot easier for someone like me, because I recognize kind of who I am and where I fit. Starts with recognizing, listening, and then you can kind of figure it out. And then again, I think it helps that we have this whole brotherhood, right? Like, I feel a part of that. I feel supported. I feel like we're all together. So when tough times hit, if you have good communication, if you have those relationships, I feel like you can deal with it, a lot better.
I say it's just, for me, it's listening. Also knowing that I walk this life living and knowing and understanding what some of these athletes are probably going through, at least from a social standpoint. But also it's just giving them the space to be who they are and say what they want. And then being in communication is just trying to help them with their wording a little bit, so they can so people can cut through the fact that maybe they're not saying it the way that they want to say it, just giving them the messaging that way. And also just listening. I think that's so important to do, and making sure that I give them that platform to utilize, and making sure they know that they have my ear, or that they have the platform to use. And then also talking with the coaches and kind of paying attention to what the program is doing as a whole, and then suggesting ideas of how we can get that outward facing, and letting people know that this is what women's basketball is doing, and this is what the athletes are taking control of, and this is what they're doing. It's not just the coaches saying we need to do this, this, and that, or myself saying we need to do this, this, and that. These is a student led. Like, this is what they want to do, and they're smart, and they're creative, and they know what they want, and they understand the climate as well. So not stifling what they want to say, but actually amplifying it. And I keep saying that word because I feel like it's so important. So
I love that. Vaughan, Scott?
Well, just to echo, I'm the same thing what Dave was just talking about. This is the first time we're, as far as content, and we talk about amplification or an extension. The program, the players and the coaches are the program. That's your voice. That's who you should be trying to amplify. I can't do that without some help from them. And whether that's through conversations, if it's a formal Zoom call, we did the same thing, talking to alums, getting their thoughts as well, current guys. And Nita, as you know, I tell our guys every day they should be posting more on social media. And that's for anything, not just social justice, team related. Because then that helps me get a better idea of where their head is at and what they're thinking, and to continue to have those conversations, not just be reactive. Like, emotions are high. It's okay. You don't have to be first all the time. And I think we saw a lot of that. Everybody wanted to be first from the team accounts, the first to take off election day, to put patches on uniforms. And the thing I've heard as a member of our DEI committee as well is, all right, now what are we doing? It's great to put a graphic up in a statement, which we've all now written how many different times, trying to be unique and original, but how are you following that? And I know we're going to get into that a little bit here coming up, but that's kind of the spot we're at right now.
Yeah, and I would echo all that as well. I think, having the coaches really be the CEOs of their programs, just making sure that they know that they have access to me. I've been really intentional about, I said before, being connected to the student athletes, but also more so the coaches too. Like, as we talk about what it means to brand their programs from a social media standpoint, 365, right? Like, it's not just about the content that comes out when we're getting ready for a season or we're getting ready for game day. And so for us, we haven't had everyone on campus since March, right? We just had both our basketball teams just go back a couple weeks ago. So, we're not playing fall sports. So, like, we have more bandwidth to have these conversations about content that's related to this space, because student athletes, because they're not playing, have more time to be able to commit to the things that they want to do to take action. And so just make sure that they know that I'm here to support has really been the key for us, and make sure that between me and the communication staff and the coaching staffs and our leadership program staff, that we're figuring out the best way to support whatever ideas and initiatives that the student athletes and the teams are trying to push forward.
Awesome. We got a couple of quick questions I want to get to before we move on to the next topic. We're going to start here from Jonathan Jones. How do student athletes and coaches share their voices and platforms, although the upper level admin may not be in agreement or try to suppress their voice? So I guess the question it's really trying to ask is, how are they able to share their voice, even with potentially the administrative exec staff potentially not wanting to delve into that? Anyone have an answer for this?
Yeah, I would hope that whatever staff, that we're talking about, it's hard to disagree that the coaches and players shouldn't share how they feel, shouldn't use their platform for more than being a basketball player, being a basketball coach. Like, if you disagree with that, that goes against, that's not like political, right? That's like fundamental, like, values. Like, when you recruit a kid to come to Duke or, Georgetown or Kansas or Marquette or any of these great programs, I think you owe it to these athletes, right? You're not just coming here to hoop. You're coming here for the opportunity that comes with wearing a uniform, but it works both ways. And you have to allow, coaches and athletes to be themselves and to take advantage of that platform, just like we're benefiting tremendously from these guys coming here and winning a lot of games on TV and all that. So if you don't agree with that, then you're the problem.
Yeah. One thing from my seat here at Influencer that we've noticed is that during the past 6 months, as we've started to grow our NIL suite and our data services offering, we're really coaching programs on how to storytell in this world in preparation for NIL, you're seeing just widespread adoption of wanting to empower athletes to not only share content on the field of play, but also off the field of play too, and really putting resources to help educate them around topics that they might not necessarily have as much insight into. But it's important because for these coaches to, talk the talk, they got to be able to walk the walk. And that walk is really empowering athletes to be more than just an athlete. And so one more quick question. How have you been able to bridge the gap between student athletes and your teams to ensure their voices are being heard and amplified beyond the college community? We kind of touched on this a little stat, but who wants to take a stab at this one?
I think it's more face-to-face, as much face-to-face we can get with the student athletes. So the way to bridge the gap is making sure that it's their voice and it's the coach's voice and it's the community hearing them and not hearing just an organization saying, like, this is what we're doing. You want to hear it straight from the source type of thing. And I think that's important, and that's how you can bridge the gap for that, and making sure that it's not just stagnant. And it kind of goes back to the previous question, is like, if departments are putting out these department statements about why we should support our student athletes, why Black Lives Matter, why this social climate needs to change, and why there should be justice for some of these crimes, basically. And for you to back that up, you need to let your student athletes speak their mind, say what they have to say. And yes, it should be on brand. Like, it should be on brand with them and on brand with your organization or anything like that. But you don't have to sacrifice someone's voice for it to be that way. You don't have to sacrifice someone's values to be that way. And I think that to bridge that gap, you need to let people know what people's values are, what our brand's values are, and that we're here. Most of us work in college, so college athletics. So it's not just athletics, it's also education. So being able to educate our student athletes, educate our coaches, the fan base, the community, we're all here to learn. So if we're suppressing people's voices, we're also suppressing the opportunity to learn and educate each other.
Love it. Moving on to the next discussion point, I'm going to start with you, Vaughan. As you were having internal deliberations around this, what were some of your key learnings, and what advice would you give to other people that are on this webinar on how they need to go about informing their own strategies?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us have said the word listening a lot. I think that really is the key of, making sure that we're listening to what these student athletes are going through, and make sure that they know that we're here to help them, support them, and using their voice to express how they're feeling. I've been really extremely proud of some initiatives that we've done that have been student-led, and that comes as a result of listening. Like our men's soccer team got together and divided their team into groups, and they chose different subjects related to systemic racism. They did research, and they came back together and put together these presentations with all the data they found on these specific issues, and found organizations that were specific to some of those missions. And they put out content on their own personal social media accounts that was basically a report of, here's the topic that we researched, here's some data on what's happening, and here's an organization that you can support that's fighting for that cause. And similarly, our women's basketball team took a pause for the cause and took a break from posting social media content that was related to basketball, and split their team into groups. And they studied more topics related to the Black experience and Black culture, and the contributions that the Black community has made to our society in general. So the content approach was kind of different, but their goals and objectives were kind of the same. Men's soccer used infographics, and again, they posted that on their personal accounts, and the videos that the women's basketball team posted were kind of recaps of their discussions on their different topics. But like the most important thing, and I think the advice is to listen to your student athletes and make sure you're pushing out content that's action. It's action driving the content. It's not creating content just for the sake of, responding to something or feel like there shouldn't be the content driving action. Like both of those examples are a result of the teams getting together and say, here's what we're going to do to be better and have conversations about what's happening around us. And the content that was a result of that was telling the story of what they did. It wasn't saying, hey, we need to go make a graphic about this. Like we said, like those statements that we need to make are, part of the game. But that great content was a result of them taking action first and using the content that they put out to tell the story of what they did.
Fascinating. Scott.
Yeah, I mean, not that there's a simple answer, but I think what we've done, if you start with the simple statement that one of our basketball players made that I saw, that I'm sure everybody, if you can't support us off the court, don't support us on it. Okay. So if you use that as your baseline and then work from there, whatever your strategy is, factoring in all the other things that now you're going to have to deal with. If you always go back to that, you're going to be headed in the right direction to start, right? And I know I see a question in talking about season ticket holders and donors, and we've used the word trolls, right? You're going to get the occasional troll. Well, those trolls, a lot of cases now, are season ticket holders and donors and stakeholders, and not just people you can dismiss on a daily basis or in a feed. So I mean, there's not an easy answer to any of this. It's all new in a lot of ways, but if you break it down with it, knowing that you're going to support your players, and earlier we were talking about amplifying outside of the college community. We've actually, I wouldn't say the opposite, but we've really focused on the college community and the messages from our student athletes, not only to fellow student athletes, but the general student body. I mean, peer pressure is still a thing, right? I mean, and the voting initiative has been huge for us, and really something that our basketball team and all athletics has embraced, and making sure that the message is heard on campus, especially within that age group when it comes to the vote. So, and again, that's short term for now, and then you're on to the next initiative as well. So I know I was all over there. Hopefully I answered at least part of what you were asking.
No, you did. And I want to get to that question. I think that's an important topic because it does play into the role of, it's one thing to say that if you can't support the message, don't support the team, but it's another thing to actually enforce that. But I'd also say too, just watching across the spectrum in college athletics specifically, how much emphasis has been placed on voter registration has just been a phenomenal movement. And I'm going to kick it over to you, Kiaira, because I think you guys have done a great job with that as well on your side. So talk to me a little bit about the internal deliberations, what you've learned, and what advice you would give for other programs that maybe have not quite yet embraced that yet.
Yeah, it's mainly for us like voter education and then giving them the space so they can vote. And I mean, it started with our coaches putting in the work to make sure their athletes are good to go in that. And I think some advice I think the only advice I really have is what we've said a lot. It's just listening and then acting. Like you can't, if you're going to put out stuff and if you're going to keep this and if you're going to stick to this is not a moment, this is a movement, then you have to put in the work to all of that makes it a movement. So, and it's a process, and it's leaning into that process and doing the hard work. So when you have like our student athlete development department, they're putting in that work to make sure that every single student athlete is registered to vote. And that is a lot of work. And then also on top of that, making sure that they're educated in that. So it's not just saying, here, register to vote. Okay, you're done. No, you're registered to vote. Do you live out of state? Okay, we got to get you an absentee ballot. We got to know what the dates are. We we got to make sure you guys are educated in who you're voting for. And it's not just the presidential voting, it's also local. And do you want to vote local where you go to school at, or do you want to vote local where you're going to be living when you're not in school? And it's thinking through that process and teaching them and making sure that they are educated beyond being in college. So this is something that's going to happen every 4 years going down like in their life. So you can't just say, like, we can't just live in this moment is what I'm trying to say. And I think that's the advice. And I give credit all to our women's basketball coach and also our KU leads, which is our student development department, with helping out with getting our student athletes registered to vote, their absentee ballots, and making sure they're educated in that. And I would say, yeah, we've done a lot. We've made sure that they're registered. We made sure that their absentee ballots are in as well, and also making sure that they know what they're doing. So women's basketball hosted a presidential debate viewing party with the Black Student Union on campus and our RISE group, which is our Black student athlete group as well. So making sure they're doing that. They're doing behind the scenes stuff too. So like, I haven't posted everything that they've done,
Right.
But also I think some of those things are internal and intimate, and that they should figure those things out too. And then if it makes sense, like I said, like we've all said, is you don't need to post everything, but just making sure, I think the important thing is making sure that they're educated and that they know the process, and then that we give them the resources so they are educated and they are registered.
I love that. Last but not least on this topic, Dave.
Yeah, from a voting standpoint, I mean, Kiaira just knocked it out of the park. We've tried to kind of take a similar approach, right? It's more than just saying vote. It's about educating our players to vote. It's about, we had like Nolan Smith, again, mentioned Nolan, who's been an amazing leader. He organized a protest on campus here. All other athletes across Duke were invited. Anyone could really come. But then we went right into Cameron, and and we made sure our players were registered to vote. But we were also teaching them a lot of the things that Kiaira just said about where to vote, deadlines, all that. And then I mentioned our Brotherhood Votes Committee. So that was Reggie Love, who served with President Obama for a long time, and then Todd Singleton, another former player from back in the day. And it wasn't me driving this. This is a point I think Vaughan made. I was sort of along for the ride as the social media guy to inject maybe some creativity, but I was doing what they wanted to do. So we created a voting video, as well as like a website that it's not telling people who to vote for. It's saying here's how to vote, here's where to register, here are some voting deadlines, and so forth. Taking advantage of our platform was important for our former players. So if I could help do that, great. So I think, again, it's just as we go forward, I always think about serving our athletes and as so much more than as basketball players, and a lot goes into that outside what I do, nutrition and mental health and strength and conditioning, and the stuff we're talking about now is just as important as any of those things I just said, or more important. So I know Coach K feels that way. As a program, I think we'll go forward and have always kind of had that mindset. So we're more and more proactive. We're having conversations. We're not reactive to moments. We're together. We're forward thinking and supporting our athletes.
So I have a couple of questions here. I think one of them is an important one, and something that I've thought of recently. It's, as the conversation was being had internally, did financial implications ever come up as part of the deliberation process, particularly with alumni or sponsorship? Did anyone? I'm going to assume no, but
I'm gonna say no. I mean, I think I mentioned that diversity, equity, and inclusive position that we just created is funded by alums and donors. So for us, it seemed that we've had the support of that group for the most part. Like I said before, there's probably some people that may have reached out privately, but publicly from what we've seen, it's been extremely supportive from that group.
And then,
It for sure did. I mean, there's negative feedback, and we were aware of that, and that's no question, and it continues to be, and that's sponsors, season ticket holders. I mean, you're talking different generations, different backgrounds. I mean, yeah, I'd love to be able to say that everybody was all on board and let's do it, and but it's not the reality we live in, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So, but if you have your core value of what you're going to start with, and build off, we're going to deal with it and move on and stick with our student athletes and do the right thing.
And this kind of leads into the last topic I wanted to discuss, and we're doing pretty decent on time here. Where do we go from here? You see athletes at the pro level and truly embracing their voice and their platform. You've seen it with Steph Curry coming up with a video series where he's interviewing Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, Stacey Abrams, and even LeBron, who's invested a ton of money in his More Than a Vote initiative. And then even today, you saw CJ McCollum, Donovan Mitchell, and Tobias Harris. They interviewed Kamala Harris as part of the conversation. But is this moment here to truly stay? And where do we go from here? And what do you predict is sort of next? And I'm going to kick it to you first, Dave.
Sure. I think for me personally, I've always felt a responsibility to, help our players, but never felt, more responsibility to really empower our athletes to truly kind of tell their story beyond themselves as a basketball player. And I think, we can do that in a lot of different ways, but helping them, learn how to embrace their platform, help them understand how to stand up for what's important to them. They have, if you choose to take this on, and really all of our former players have, and you applaud them, it's a big responsibility, right? Because they're role models. People are looking up to them. They're in powerful positions. There's a lot of pressure that goes with that. So they need our support. And I think being as proactive as we can about how to do that and investing resources and time into doing that is next, right? They're educated, they're supported. So yeah, we're going to keep doing, the fire photo shoots with them and the dope mixtapes or whatever, but there's another level to this. Andres, can you fire up just a couple pictures that I sent, maybe one of those 2 pics. Can you put that on the screen?
Andres is like this computer that's in this. It's not a human at all, Andres.
He's a robot.
He's a robot.
Just throws up in this. So this is a good example, right? And not that this is a crazy video or anything, but and we were thinking about how we wanted to do our player photo shoot. A lot of programs, you do your lifestyle photo shoot. The guys can kind of, wear the fits they want, and sometimes you do on a white backdrop or whatever. So we want to do something different, going to Durham, and this was, one of the spots, partly why we chose to go to downtown Durham. We knew this was there were these actually, we didn't put this up. These were some signs that someone had posted, around town. You lean into that a little bit, right? And maybe you have conversations with the players around that moment. And, as you go forward, you look for moments like that. And maybe you encourage them to post that photo, or, they can decide for themselves. But I think you're going to need strong relationships than ever with your players, so you can activate on these types of things. You're going to continue to need access, to the athletes, so you really, really know how they feel. I think, if there are people listening to this on the AD level or assistant AD level, I think one takeaway is encourage access, to people like myself, your younger folks who are creating content, where it's appropriate, let them be around, let them have relationships with the athletes, because the more you have that kind of back and forth, the more you can be authentic in representing their story on your platform, and more importantly, helping them figure out, how to really go forward here as they all want to. There's, like I said, one player who has not wanted to be more than a basketball player, so to speak. I mean, they recognize the moment. It's very important to them. So I think the future is just leaning into that as much as we can, and being supportive and an educational resource, to the student athletes, so that they can so they can do that and thrive and have an amazing experience and take full advantage of their platform.
Did you also want to show this video right now, or you want to wait till a little
No,
bit?
we can. That was kind of long. We can skip the video.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Vaughn.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Dave was saying. I mean, I do think that this movement is here to stay. I mean, and this work is very much in line with why we partner with Influencer, right? Like, to really focus on helping support the student athletes, build their brand and help them tell their story. And the work that the student athletes are doing in the social justice space or in any community service initiative that they have is how we tell their whole story aside from what's happening on the field and on the court. And like you said, the pro athletes are doing a great job of providing that example. And I think it's our job to educate and support and make sure the student athletes know that they don't have to wait until they're pros to be able to use their voice. Like, right now, as a student athlete at their university, like, they have the platform now to be able to make an impact. And so just making sure that we're helping them as much as we can to do that and do it in the right way, an impactful way that has meaning for them, is how we help this moment, live more than just, like you said, the pro athletes, like making sure that they understand that they can do it now. They don't need to wait until they get to be pros. They can take advantage of the platform that they're given as a college student athlete right now.
Scott.
Great question, and I would say this is the biggest thing I've struggled with and continue to, and it's that balance, right? It's like, how much should we be leading as administrators, and how much should the student athletes be leading, and where do you meet in those conversations? Perfect example. I got an email today from a member of our staff. Hey, what are we going to do? What are we doing for social media on election day? Well, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, it's somewhere in the middle, right? Like, all basketball took off election day, and now they're trying to figure out what is that besides just a day off. And it's different for every program. And a lot of these conversations that we've talked about, like, Dave, Duke, love everything you guys are doing, right? I mean, great spot. But that's not the case everywhere. And I think hopefully people that are listening to that are trying to find out how they can make their unique situation work. And if the conversations are happening, that's a great start. But there also has to be some action behind the graphics, behind the statements. They can continue that momentum, and it's got to be driven from the voices on the team, and then hopefully executed, assisted by administrators and coaches. And if that's not happening, it makes it a lot tougher. So that's, moving forward, facilitating those conversations, making sure there's a follow through. And when voting is done, what's the next thing? And if there is a next thing, and it can't just be, like I said, a graphic or a I voted sticker, So that's kind of where I'm at.
It just can't be lip service. It actually has to make some sort of change. And that's always the toughest thing to kind of figure out. How do you make a lasting impact without just putting out a graphic and a press release? How do you actually move the ball forward in this? Last, Kiaira. I don't know if I'm freezing up on my end, but Kiaira.
Yeah, I mean, I did what everyone else said. I would say to keep it short, continue to tell their stories 360. Don't just share what they're doing on the basketball court or any other field, pitch, whatever they're on. Make sure you tell their whole story, and make sure if you tell their whole story and you show that, I think that continues this moment into a movement. I think it continues to tell their side of things a little bit more, and I think that makes your graphics more powerful, your videos more impactful, because your fans, your community, even people in your athletic department know the program and the people that make up the program a little bit better. And that's what I'm trying to do, is continue to tell each one of the student athletes that I cover their stories 360. And that involves me asking them, like, what do you think is a cool graphic or cool video? Or, It's talking to the coaches and asking them. It's making sure that I'm listening, like on the bus, like not eavesdropping on their conversations, but making sure, like, you know, I'm listening when they're talking or when they're having their fun conversations or they're just goofing around. There's stories everywhere, and there's you just gotta be a little bit creative and be willing to step outside of your box. And I'm speaking more as from a communications director, is just being able to step outside of your box and do more than just a press release or more than just what we traditionally do, because times are changing. Like, it is more influencer based rather than just, let me just put this thing. Like, these athletes are influencers. They can use their platform. You might as well help them do it.
And I think there's one thing that I've learned personally today, it's that listening matters. And, you know, I often get asked as part of my role as an influencer, you know, what is the biggest impact that 2020 has on athletes? And my answer is always the same. It's when athletes, organizations, creatives have truly embraced the power of the athletes' platform and the movement, and embrace their storytelling and giving them a voice. And so with that, thank you, Dave, Vaughan, Scott, Kiaira, for your time today. This was an incredible conversation. Thank you to everyone for joining us on the stream and the questions. I appreciate your time, and you know, this is a conversation that it does not end here. It needs to continue to keep happening. And I think for all of us to truly embrace this moment, it's necessary for us to push for the change that we need to see across our society and to really help the athletes, to help our fans and our community sort of come together and unite. So again, thank you all. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.